more of a praise report, we're going to be honest. 2 weeks ago, we made it known to this congregation that we had excommunicated Meli Stevenson Orlena. Since then, I want you to know we met with her. More information was brought to our attention, and she has cleared her name. There has not been full reconciliation, but she has cleared her name. I want to make that very clear. Please pray for her as she seeks out a new church, as she become a member and submit to that church's leadership for encouragement and accountability. Amen? And now we come to the cherry on top. We've had a chance to sit under the preached word.
Okay, so now we're going to just briefly review the update that Rev Rudy gave on May 29th. And yeah, just kind of talk about how we feel that did not suffice. Timothy had mentioned that the last conversation with Rev Rudy, he said that he didn't finish reading like the whole PowerPoint and not having like a full understanding of what like my grievances are and why I wanted them to give a follow-up in the first place, because of all of the misinformation like that was not given in this like minute update.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think the first thing was the fact that they had brought up like they had a meeting with us or with her, I guess they said just her, but and that more information was brought to their attention. And I don't know, there's just a general vagueness to this that is a little frustrating because one, like I don't actually know what new information we brought. Like everything they made that communication decision on was already information that you had previously communicated. So
right at this point, it's been made clear that they knew I was separating and that they agreed to the separation.
Yeah, and that you extended the time and didn't communicate. But you with them specifically, them, not Chris. And so I think there's two things that are a problem in that. One is it sounds like the entire basis again was a lack of communication constitutes abandoning marriage vows. But two is if there's any new information, it was that they realized that you and your husband, Chris, had been in communication and he had kept infringing on that. And so that is also a level of miscommunication. It's like they weren't hearing from you, but Chris was hearing from you about these dates and these times, and then spinning around and saying, I'm not hearing back from her without the context of everything else. And so I feel like even if you're going to go back and say new information, it's like that information needs to kind of entail the fact that like, this was a lack of communication on like your husband, Chris's part, because he didn't speak up. Like you were definitely communicating and he took that narrative and made it something different because he had basically, those cards in his hand. Like that bothers me that wasn't really addressed, but it looks like now that you've decided to be more clear with your experience. But it's like, so for one, that's just an issue. I think that's, for sure a problem is the amount of information they're saying they got versus what they already had.
Right.
I don't know if you have
And I mean, I think even that is like speculation because we don't know if Chris did say like, yeah, we did agree to 2 more months. And they still took that as like, I did something wrong.
Yeah.
Or if he really did not disclose that to them. Either way, I think that it's still pointing to the fact that there's some manipulation going on.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's just not being talked about.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels like a sweeping, like, okay, let's move on. We're not gonna explain this to you guys. You know, that's what it felt like.
Yeah. And I think the defense for that is almost that like we tried to stay vague in the excommunication. So we tried to stay vague in the restoration also. But the thing is that like when you stay vague in an excommunication, it leaves people to the mercy of whatever their imagination comes up with. Like when I listened to it personally, I was like, are we talking about sexual immorality? Are we talking about like what are we dealing with here? You know? And so the
Right, before
vagueness,
you had all the details, that's what you were thinking.
yeah. And so I was just kind of like, that matters because if yeah, like if you're not going to clarify, like it's like we're trying not to put all their business out there. But if you're going to stay vague, make sure you say what it isn't as much as you're saying what it is. And so that's one thing. But then they go into the next thing they go into is that she basically, yeah, that you cleared your name. And so they're like, yeah, you cleared your name. And so it's like, unless somebody just remembers, it's like, why wouldn't you go through the same effort of walking through the offenses
Right.
and saying, hey, so in regards to her abandoning her marriage, like there was information we didn't have, even though I think they had it. But it's like, even if you're going to say it that way, you say that, and then you say, and she still hasn't found another church home or something like that. Please be praying for her. But concerning her faith in Christ, I was like, she's in a hard season. You know, like there's a way to address each of these that at least tries to do them justice. And I still feel like this at this point, like deserves like real conversation. Because it's like this isn't the church holding you accountable if they're just presenting vague information to the church. Like that's not excommunication. The excommunication is bring them before the church and have these
Right.
things said, or you know what I mean? Like, but to just sort of get everyone to agree on a topic with no context,
Yeah.
consistently no context. Like this came in with no context and it left with no context, but you have dealt with the fact that people with no context have made context for themselves. Like that's frustrating. And I feel like that should have been done more justice. And I think the reason it might not have been is because there's so much of this that seems like error or lack of concern or lack of compassion or like picking a side. Like there's just a lot of stuff that this could almost say they made a mistake. And I feel like that's seeming like, I could be wrong, but it's seeming like the ultimate goal of this is for them to remain faultless in their decision.
And I think that's where that's the point. I honestly
Yeah.
think like that's you're touching it now, because at this point, after the meeting we had and the PowerPoint presentation that has been at everyone's disposal that was there at that meeting for the amount of time it's been available, it's like at this point it's been made clear that there are things that you misspoke, you know, that not you, that they misspoke, lied about, that needed to be cleared up and taken accountability for. There are specific points. So if, you know, Rev Rudy is saying things along the lines of, I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know what we did wrong. It's like, we told you. And you can't say we didn't tell you. We told you.
Yeah.
And you're not taking accountability
Yeah.
for those things. And that's a problem. That's you saying that I cleared my name. It does not suffice like that. And I think it's also important to just touch back on what you were saying, like the original excommunication video, even though it was vague, there was a more weight to it. The way they presented it, the words that were chosen, there was more attention to condemn me. And then when it came time for your opportunity to clear things up on May 29th, it was like a flash, you know, and that's just interesting. It's just,
yeah. No, I think that is like, and I think one thing too is that like, because Rev Rudy said that too. He was like, you know, even now, basically with the information I had, I stand by the decision we made. And it's like to excommunicate you, like he said that in the first recording. And it's like, if that's like, then apparently you made a bad decision because we didn't bring anything new, you know? Like the
Right.
only thing, no, nothing. Like, yeah, we didn't bring anything new to the table. And so the only thing you're really talking about is after you decided to leave the church, then you weren't communicating. Then the narrative started to spin. Then Chris got the opportunity to say the things that you weren't doing, or the money taken out, or different things out of context. Like, but it's like at this point, like, for one, you've left the church, you've left their shepherding. And so it's like, if you're going to speak to an excommunication, I feel like you have to speak to the part that you were privy to. And that part is the part that they said you had grounds for divorce on. So I don't really know. I like it still is. It concerns me how little, effort
I
went into the other thing. And they just kind of wanted to be over with it, it felt like.
yeah, I
Well, I
felt
guess they
that
said
too.
that, but
Yeah, they did say that. But I just want to say too, like, I know that everybody's busy. Everybody has their own lives and like issues, you know, that they're dealing with or whatever. And I know that I would never have the information that I have about covert abuse or narcissism if I wasn't going through it. You know, like
mhm,
I had to, because I was going through it, I had to educate myself, right?
mhm,
And you would be shocked if you do, anybody who's listening to this, if you do decide to do your own research, you'll see that it's common for Christian women, specifically people that are going to church, you know, and in the body of Christ, how common it is for this smear campaign to happen, where the abuser turns the church against you. It's a common thing. So many women go through it. And so even just educating yourself on that as a leader, a pastor, whatever, and like looking at what's happening, you know, you would
mhm.
know. But again, it's like they didn't do their research. And so it's like I look like I'm just talking, you know, but if you
Mhm.
do the research, it backs me up. But the
Yeah.
thing is, like, you have to want to do the research. So if you do find
Mhm.
yourself going to do the research, you will find that this is a common issue. And a lot of Christian women go through extra heartbreak from the church because they were slandered against and they believed that slander. It's
Yeah.
very common. Um,
Yeah.
very, very common.
And if not the research, I think the conversation needs to happen. Like, so this is why, yeah, my link, Juuna'e's link, so that you can get in contact with people and have these conversations for those people viewing. Like, it's really important because I honestly think, like, yeah, if you're not going to take the effort, the time, and the energy to be informed and to understand, then to me, you automatically lose the privilege to have an opinion. Like
Mm-hmm.
you just don't get to speak. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is me speaking, honestly, that like you don't get to be uninformed and help the opinion pool on something, a topic that's as complex as this. So
That you're
it's
not
like if you're
informed
not
on.
gonna, yeah, if you're not gonna do the legwork to either get in contact with somebody who knows more, dig for yourself, or get in contact with somebody, then like it's not helpful to talk about what is or isn't going to be what you shouldn't
Yeah.
do yeah, like I was just like, because when you're dealing with it, when you're that person, like that's profoundly isolating to know that so long as I can't communicate this, nobody's going to do the research, and I don't have the stamina. Like, yeah, you're fighting alone, surrounded by people that say they care, but no, like I can understand that frustration. And even if people do care, like I don't know if people have been in that position, but I empathize with the fact that if out of 50 people in the church, 5 of them are real good and deep, you don't know which 5 those are. Like, and it's exhausting to have to
Yeah.
retell your story to find the real ones, especially when they reach out in your time of distress and need. So I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that I think does need to be like properly kind of addressed. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Just to reiterate, like the reason for this whole project of videos being made was, again, we gave them the opportunity to, you know, take accountability and really clear this up. but ultimately this was their final response in a way. And we just want you to know that there's so much more to the story, and what you do with that information is of course up to you, like because it's available to you now. And that's the purpose of making this project. I did not know Timothy did not know me at all. Like, he's a friend of Juuna'e's from a different state back in their college days. So he came into this situation without the context. And he listened to the excommunication video by itself before even hearing my side. And he was like, I don't know if you want to say
Oh yeah, I can.
what your perspective was. Not like, you're not even my friend for real. Like, you really are just like, you're my friend now. Like,
Right.
you came in as an outsider.
Yeah. Nah, and part of it is I've been in positions like this where, yeah, you're at the mercy of the people that are willing to fight for you because you've exhausted all your resources. And so, but yeah, my thing was I didn't know her story. It was just that the excommunication seemed like it skipped steps, even in the context that I was hearing it in, because I knew enough to know that like sexual immorality wasn't on the table. So the verses that were used got my attention, because in my mind, it's like there are verses that talk about excommunication without bringing up sexual immorality. Like, use the verses that you feel apply to the situation. Don't use verses that potentially can cause people to wonder, like the context, severity, or something else. It's like if those verses don't fit, don't use them. Like, that's how we preach for sure. And that should definitely be how we present anything when we're using God's word. So that bothers me that the context of your situation wasn't given justice. But then, yeah, there were just things within it. And obviously the other videos have it, but there was just a huge miss. And I was thinking, like, if this is the stance, I was like, the church has no way of knowing more information than they're going to give them. And I knew Mel, like at that point, was too exhausted to be communicating with the church. And I was like, who's speaking for her? Like, who's going to go through the process of basically defending somebody that's in need? And so, no, like that was important enough that, like, I feel like Jesus says that, like, bear one another's burdens, or the process to challenging elders or anything like that. Like, those aren't things you're supposed to be doing alone. And you're definitely not supposed to be doing them that long. And honestly, when we get into that whole local church thing, it's like at the end of the day, like, we're all part of the same body. So, like, as far as I'm concerned, like, that's a sister. And
Yeah.
I know enough to know that she needs some help. So I'm assuming, did you say that because I've gone through great lengths while knowing very little about you? So others should.
Yeah, because you said something in the beginning of this video that kind of touched on it, and I wanted to just highlight that more. Like, you're not, like, we didn't know each other, and so you're not coming at this from even a biased perspective,
Yeah.
So
Shoot,
just
you can
wanting,
attest to that.
yeah. So the conversation we just had, and I don't know if this will be in the video, but it's just a thought I'm having. Like, it's interesting how God will send people like you wouldn't expect, right, to come to your aid, because you're expecting it to come from close proximity, right? And then so when the people, right, that I was doing life with, going to church with, weren't coming to my aid, it's like, God brings, a total stranger. And it's like, that's so interesting. Like, I don't know what that means, but it's just like, why it shouldn't be like that. Even I'm grateful, right? Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful. But like, that doesn't make sense.
I think a lot of that gets credited to a lack of community. Like, churches just struggle with community in general. And so Like, you know, we come to church on Sunday and then we leave church, and the serious ones go to Bible study on Wednesday, but nobody like knows each other's lives, and everyone's living life. So real stuff is happening,
Yeah.
but it's like there's a sense in where it's like the structure of the church is so divorced from community and living with each other and knowing each other's lives and eating each other's, like, sharing meals together, like, you know, like that by the time something real happens,
Mm.
there's catching up that either needs to happen,
Mm.
or because you haven't had their story up until this point, and then all of a sudden something real happens and you're trying to be something you haven't been up until this point. Like, so
Mm.
like, even as a mercy to, like, you know, the people at RCLA who might not have reached out and done different things, like, I do understand the tension of the situation, because it's like, dang, like I didn't know. And it's like, you know, if y'all weren't doing life on that level, it's a whole nother thing. If somebody else, if you shared these emails with people in the congregation, they knew this, and then they just kind of were like, oh, I don't think I want to say it. I don't want to rock the boat. That's a totally different thing. But if, you know, people are just kind of like, I mean, you know, their marriage is complicated, or, you know, like whatever conversations you have on Sunday that are surface versus the, like, somebody knows my Monday through Fridays, like, that's, yeah. So, but I don't necessarily, because one, I do know like certain people did reach out, but it's like the people reaching out wouldn't have had that lane in your life. Like, the only reason I got the lane in your life is because Juuna'e has it. And
Yeah.
so I came in and she was like, hey, I know somebody that is trustworthy, that yada, yada, yada. And so, like, I got a privilege that most people wouldn't have gotten in your life. But for everyone else, it's like, yeah, if I had been in your congregation, same exact person, and I'd reached out, like, you wouldn't have had a reason, if we didn't know each other any deeper than we did before, to answer that call over all the other ones. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a fault of them, but it's
Yeah.
just the fact that if you don't have those relationships before something happens, when something happens, it's very difficult to fault the people in pain for not trusting you. Like,
Right. No, I'm glad you said that, because we were, you know, not even a year into that church yet, you know,
mhm,
and we were still at a point where we're trying to make real connections with like married couples. And like that was always a struggle because we didn't live in the neighborhood too.
mhm,
And so there are a lot of obstacles, but we did, you know, we were always moving towards that, and like, you know, going to people's houses, or, you know, doing
yeah,
things at the park together or whatever, like trying to build that connection. Um,
yeah,
but then like with a topic as serious as that, abuse, like, and
yeah,
then you don't even realize what's happening yourself. It's
yeah,
just all unfolding in its own time. And it's like, I remember there
mhm,
was a point where we were trying to figure it out with Rev Chris, and he was like, he suggested that don't bring this up when you're hanging out with this couple, because we don't know what's going on yet. And I remember feeling like, but I need help. Like, I want to see, maybe they can help us. But I was advised to keep it, don't talk about it yet, because we don't know what's really happening yet, you know? And that made me feel like, okay, then what are we really doing? Like, why am I going to have dinner with you guys so that I could put on a fake smile? Marriage is going great, guys. Like, and I
okay,
remember
I didn't know that.
I remember I canceled one of our dates with another couple, because I was like, what's the point?
Yeah, if you're
I
not gonna
can't
be
go to dinner
real,
and pretend. And I remember I laid in bed all day depressed, because I was like, I can't go and pretend, like, and I can't say anything. I'm gonna be sitting there like with a blank stare on my face the whole time. There's no point.
dang, I did not know that. Okay,
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
yeah,
All
okay,
that to say, it's
yeah,
complicated.
yeah, like complicated's the word of the day for sure.
Yeah.